Hello, my name's Joe Espana, and in case you're wondering, the surname's a bit of a clue to the nationality. Yes, that's right, I'm German. No, I'm not. Obviously, I'm not. Anyway, I thought I'd do an initial chat with you, just to give you a sense of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So the first question, I guess, that's it's certainly on my mind, and I'm not sure whether it's on your mind, but why another podcast? I mean, after all, there are so many podcasts out there, some which are absolutely terrific, and others which you think I'm not going to waste more than 30 seconds listening to the intro. But the reason why I thought, well, apart from getting into the 21st century and getting a little bit techno, by the way, I don't mean techno as in dance music. I actually mean, up to speed with technology. Particularly in our world where digitization has sort of taken over everything. The reason why I thought let's do a podcast is because I think the moment is a really good one for us to have conversations about real things and real challenges and front them up. And I thought also that COVID and the pandemic and the lockdown really shone a light on lots of things that I'd like to discuss with you. I'd like to be thought-provoking with my ideas. I'd like to really get you away from the day-to-day nitty-gritty weeds that you sometimes find yourself in, and get you to look up, listen, and think about what's being discussed and whether any of it is relevant in your situation. I'm speaking to you if you're an MD trying to drive your business forward, you're a CEO of maybe a multinational or a global organization and having to deal with all the moving parts that your organization's made up of, or whether you're an HR director who's trying to figure out with your C-suite colleagues the people side of the enterprise. By the way, I have a little saying, and that is that ultimately every enterprise is a human enterprise. And, lots of interesting things emerge just because of that, because we're all human beings with different needs, expectations, wants, and desires. And as an HR director, you're probably having to spin all those plates all at the same time. Or maybe you're a head of L&D and you're struggling with the reality of having to deliver and build on your organization's capability, maybe with reduced resources. After all, we are in a cost of living crisis. There isn't money and resources just to be thrown around, and so you're having to be smarter, more creative, and ingenious in the way that you fulfill the demands of your business customers, your business clients internally. So I'm speaking to all of you, and I'd like to maybe provoke your thinking, share some stories, and share some ideas. I'd like it to be a really practical conversation that I have with you and with the guests that I'm going to have. So I think what I'd like to focus on is what can be done with some of the challenges that we face, the real ones, the ones that are going to help us move forward. And sometimes you might think I'm being a little bit irreverent. That's not to say that I'm poking fun at anyone or anything or trying to be silly just to engage you. Not really. I probably am irreverent from time to time, and maybe my guests might be, because after about 30 years plus, I genuinely believe two things. One is that everything's connected to everything somehow. In our world, definitely. And the second thing is, when you look hard enough, even in the blackest moments, there is humor if you look hard enough. So I'd like to share some silly stories, some funny stories, some real stories, some experiences, and within all of that, some of the big mistakes I've made over the years. and perhaps we can learn from them together so that you don't make the mistakes that I've made. I'm going to have some guests, and the reason why I'm bringing the guests that I'm choosing to have a chinwag with is because they've got bags of experience. They've lived and breathed our themes. They've got the t-shirts, they've got the scars, and they're able to explore those subjects with us together and help you figure out what are the tangible things you could do about those challenges. The key areas that I'd like to discuss with you are, I suppose, the 4 points of my own business or organizational compass, the areas of practice in the work that Performance Equations does. And that is around culture and organizational culture building and shaping, leadership and building that pipeline of leadership effectiveness throughout your organization, teams and how they work and what does high performing teams actually look like. And of course, the most recent hot potato and one that's got a lot of legs is the notion of employee engagement, or perhaps employee experience. That might be another framing that you use. But the kind of things I'm interested in exploring with you, if we take each one in turn, is what about culture? So I always find it super interesting when a client approaches me and says, Joe, I would really love to develop further our organizational culture, or something's changed and we need to really think about reshaping our culture. And Mike, the question I always ask is why? What's driving this? And have you got a handle on what your existing culture is today that's not working for you, or that's maybe creating a sense of dissatisfaction? Because that's our starting point, isn't it? Is really understanding what our current culture is and what culture you need in order to fully execute this organization's strategic ambitions. So taking to pieces culture and its component parts and figuring out what can we actually do to drive the kind of culture and build the kind of culture we're looking for. Of course, what falls out of that is another point on my compass, which is around leadership and leadership effectiveness. And again, a question that a lot of organizations maybe haven't spent sufficient time thinking about is, well, what kind of leadership do we need around here? And why is that not existent right now? As I said before, I think one of the interesting things about our recent history, our recent years from the pandemic up till today, is that what COVID did, and particularly the lockdown did, was to shine a spotlight on the whole question of work. What does it mean to go to work or be at work or work? And the other thing that I think comes into play here is that, I was reading recently that for the first time, probably in the history of modern industrial societies, we've got 4 or maybe even 5 generations working together in the workplace in one form or another, all at the same time. And that raises some really interesting perspectives and challenges. The millennials that are at work now have a different view, needs, expectations of work from their parents or their grandparents. Then the whole view of what it means to go to work and be in employment, what they want out of an employer, what they need from an employer, and how they want to be led and managed by those people senior to them in the work context is completely different from the experiences of ourselves. If you're a baby boomer, that's a really difficult word to say, isn't it? Baby boomer. I have to put my teeth back in. Or our parents, and maybe even our grandparents. But of course, we're retiring much later. And these 4 or 5 generations are all in the workplace all at the same time. And we are rubbing up against each other and trying to figure out how best to make all this work. You can't disconnect human frailty, human expectations from the whole mix of what it's like to be at work. And like some of the questions that we want to think about in terms of culture and leadership is, well, how do we create the kind of workplace that people actually love being part of? How do we build trust and respect and integrity and compassion and humanity and empathy and fairness and well-being? Well, I could have a massive list, couldn't I? All different subjects for us to explore, perhaps. But it all leads us to another subject, which is around teams and how do teams work with each other? Have we got a clear, concise, and unanimous, let's say, view of what high performance team working actually is? In all the years I've been in this field, I can't think of one single client who has ever said to me, Joe, we're not really that interested in high performance team working. In fact, we're not that interested in team working. What we want is people to come to work, do their job, and do it to the best of their ability so that we produce the products and services, widgets or whatever that we're selling to our clients. And please don't discuss team working further with us. That place just does not exist. All organizations are in one way or another thinking about how teams work. I think there's another aspect to it as well, which is how teams work not only with themselves, but across the organization. How they collaborate cross-functionally. And is that intact team as cohesive as it can be when it's operating with competing objectives, demands, etc. Of course, going full circle on my compass, the third point on my compass is employee engagement. And again, I just think the timing, although the timing was right to always think about employee engagement or employee experience, whichever title you'd prefer, I think that COVID again has really shone a spotlight on this subject. And we're really thinking very, very carefully about the nature of our workforce and how people are feeling being part of this enterprise, and the diversity that we may or may not have in our workforce, the level of engagement and satisfaction that our workforce might have, and what does it mean to work here? So those are the subjects that I'd like to explore with you all. We'll do this in a number of ways. And as I say, I've got some guests that are going to have a chin wag with me. I'm not really going to interview them. I'm going to have a conversation over a subject and see where the conversation goes. I'd like you to participate. So please connect with us wherever you get your podcasts. Sign up, subscribe so you don't miss any of the episodes, and engage in the conversation. So if you have any questions, or if you'd like to make a point, or if you have a suggestion perhaps for an episode, a subject area for us to explore together, then please do get in contact, because I'd like us to be all part of this conversation and see where it leads us. I am really looking forward to talking with you and sharing some of my thoughts, and maybe getting some of your thoughts back. So in the meantime, until next time, look after yourselves, and see you or speak to you very soon. Right, time for a cup of tea and a biscuit and a lie down probably. Okay, let me put all this away and get some sun.